In this video, I'll show you how you can manipulate the built-in reverb channel within the Decades expansion library for Superior Drummer 3 to create a variety of reverb sounds. So right now we have the default library selected within the Decades expansion, and to enable the reverb channel, if it is not yet enabled, all you have to do is select the channel, and you can go up to the bleed enabled drop-down menu and select enable all bleed. Now right now, if we take a listen to our drum track, there's no reverb. You can see by 0 out of 9 instruments enabled. So we'll go ahead and enable that. And then let's turn up this reverb channel and take a listen. So right away you have a reverb channel you can use, and again that can be used with any preset within the Decades expansion library or any kit configuration. Let's grab another great sounding kit, the 1980s Rock Infusion, which is the Pearl kit, and let's go ahead and make sure all channels are enabled. Let's mute the reverb channel and see how it sounds with and without. So very quickly, without any effects, you can enable the reverb channel that's built in with the Decades preset. But let's review some creative ways to use and implement this feature. We go into my presets menu, and let's go into the tune track dropdown, and we'll use the valve to tape preset. So now you can see our mixer channel has updated. A lot of different effects here, primarily this valve distortion effect. We have some EQ, and on the main output, tape simulator, punch exciter, and a compressor. If we go back into the drums, we have the Pearl configuration, which is a great big punchy sounding drum kit, so this will work very well for this example. Let's take a listen to this preset as is. And notice that our reverb channel is not currently being used. Now the fader may be turned up, but you can see no instruments are loaded, so there's no reverb being used currently. So we can simply enable bleed from all instruments. So that's going to bring in the built-in reverb. We'll solo it. Let's take a listen. Great sounding reverb. We'll unsolo and listen with the entire mix. Once again, you can adjust the level of this reverb to taste. Now let's talk about how we can actually manipulate and get creative with this reverb channel. The first thing is this reverb channel, the built-in reverb within the Decades expansion library, works just like any other channel. For example, a room channel, where you have over in the properties menu on the right, the option to adjust the level envelope release. And this will allow you to adjust the decay and shorten the decay of the reverb. Let's solo the reverb channel now. We'll go back into my kit. I'm going to select my snare drum. And back into the mixer. Let's bring up our velocity pad. Control Option Alt. We'll pin it. So you can hear we have a lot of reverb there, and you can really hear that decay. So maybe I really like that, but I want to shorten it. Here's how we can do that. Simply select the reverb channel, go into the properties menu, and under level envelope releases, we can shorten the envelope. Now let's go pretty drastic here so you can really hear that difference. Completely different, almost sounds like a gated reverb at this point. If I go back to where it was, Option Alt click on the level envelope release. So we can get a really short release or anything in between, really. And we can get very, very short. Let's exaggerate this here just for effect. I'm going to unsolo the channel. Let's listen to the snare drum with the entire mix. Now, because we've turned it down so low, this gives us the opportunity to actually turn up the reverb channel. If I set this back to 0, we take a listen. You can really hear that decay, but as I shorten the envelope release for the reverb, and especially if I go very short, you don't hear it as much. So I'm going to go ahead and turn up the reverb channel. And that reverb is there. If I mute the reverb channel, you can hear it. Let's really exaggerate this. We'll bring it up to 0. Now you can hear that gated reverb effect. And there I brought up the envelope release for the reverb channel just a little bit. And it makes a really big impact on the sound. Let's dial it back a little bit and increase the level envelope release even more. So a nice gated reverb effect as compared to the original reverb channel, so an unaltered envelope release, a really nice long decay. In which case I'd want to most likely bring the reverb channel down. But this highlights how you can manipulate this built-in reverb channel, adjust the level envelope release, and adjust the level of the reverb itself to taste. Now, another option within this properties menu with the reverb channel selected is we can decide which instruments we want this reverb applied on. Very similar to if I were to do a bus send on, let's say, the kick and snare. So I'm sending the kick and snare to a bus. We'll label this plate and we'll apply a plate reverb. So by doing so, I have now applied a plate reverb to just the kick and snare drum. So I'm going to undo all of that. And we're really simulating the same thing here with our selections. Right now, all instruments are enabled, but we could go through and only grab the kick and snare. So I'm going to highlight everything else. We'll click on the hi-hat and the cymbals. We're going to turn them off. So now only the kick and only the snare are being sent through this reverb channel. Let's go ahead and turn it back up so you can really hear that. So no toms and no room mics, only the kick and snare. And maybe we want to adjust the level. Maybe we really want a lot of this reverb on the snare, not so much on the kick drum. We can dial the kick drum back. It's almost like using a bus send and adjusting that send level within the reverb channel. And don't forget, we can still apply our level envelope releases as well. So let's really shorten this. So we have a gated reverb effect. Let's turn back up the reverb channel. We'll bring the kick back up a little bit and let's take a listen. And again, this is applied only to the kick and the snare. We could very easily add it to the toms just by enabling the toms. And again, we can adjust the level to taste. I'll have rack tom 1 selected. I'll shift click and click on rack tom 2 and we can adjust that level. Maybe we want to bring that down as well. So primarily, most of the reverb send is from the snare. Kick is a little bit less and toms have just a little bit. So let's go ahead and enable everything again, and we'll reset everything back to 0 just by using Alt Option click. Let's go ahead and reset the level envelope release for the reverb channel as well. We'll bring that back down just a little bit. Now, I mentioned before we could use bus sends to select specific channels and create another reverb channel separate from the built-in reverb channel. I'll click on the kick drum and then command or control click any other channels we want. So I want kick, snare, and the toms. By the way, holding command or control, I just dragged over to select all of those toms. We're going to go into the bus send, so we'll send all of these to a bus channel, label this hall reverb, and we'll add the hall reverb effect, turn up the mix all the way, and this is a pretty exaggerated reverb, so we're going to bring the reverb time and size down just a little bit, and it will still be a very long reverb. Let's pull down the level. Let's mute the built-in reverb channel. Let's hear what we have. So a completely different reverb sound, and keep in mind with these sends, we can of course adjust levels on any of these as needed. But what I can do is mix in this hall reverb with the built-in reverb and adjust both of the levels on the faders to taste. I'm of course exaggerating this, but you can hear how you can use both together for unique reverb sound. And don't forget, the principles we talked about before still apply. So the built-in reverb channel, let's go ahead and turn that up quite a bit, and let's shorten the level envelope release so we get that gated reverb effect. If I mute the hall reverb, we can really hear this. Get the velocity pad again. So nice gated reverb sound, and then I'll bring in the hall reverb. So we have a short gated reverb that we're using with the built-in reverb within the Decades library, shortening the envelope release, and we're using a long hall reverb that we've used with bus routing. So that's one way we can utilize other effects. Now I'm going to undo all of that. We'll go back to where we were. Great undo feature. By the way, I just used the Command Z function until I got back to where I was. So what we can do with this reverb here is just put a different type of reverb on here. Now let's actually put the hall reverb on again. We'll shorten the reverb time and size. Let's turn up the mix. And now we're combining different reverbs. And now we get a completely unique reverb by combining the two. And we can manipulate that even further by adjusting the envelope release. We'll still get that long hall decay, but we can adjust that envelope and adjust the settings of any reverb, or really any effect we put in here. And there when I adjusted the dry wet mix, that's when you really heard that level envelope release adjustment, because it wasn't being oversaturated by the hall reverb. You heard that original short gated reverb sound, and then we can adjust the level between the dry or the built-in reverb with the level envelope release adjustment and this ultra long hall reverb. So we have a lot of leverage there with what we can do. We could add any type of reverb or really any effect we want onto this reverb channel. But that gives you an idea of some of the many possibilities that you have using the built-in reverb within the Decades expansion library for Superior Drummer 3.